A train is more than just a means of transport. Throughout history, it has been a symbol of progress, power, and ambition. When the first railways appeared, they changed empires. When they cut across Europe and Asia, they changed history. And today, in the 21st century, rail is once again becoming a tool of global change, except this time it is China that holds the timetable in its hands. The Middle East, for centuries associated with caravans, ships, and oil, is entering the age of rails. Across deserts that until recently saw only camel tracks and oil trucks, railway lines are starting to run, connecting ports, cities, and borders. Every one of these tracks has a common direction: east, towards China. For Beijing, rail is not just transport, it is a civilizational strategy. Trains carry not only goods, but ideas, influence, technology, and dependencies. Through them runs the lifeblood of the New Silk Road, a project meant to link Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe into a single economic system. At first glance, it is just infrastructure, steel rails, platforms, stations. But when you look closer, each one is like a line on the map of a new world. Chinese railway companies are now present in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, Egypt, and Israel. They build tunnels, bridges, metro lines, and even high-speed trains across deserts that for thousands of years resisted civilization. The Middle East has understood that oil will not last forever, but rail can. For Saudi Arabia, it is a way to integrate the country. For the Emirates, a key to new logistics. For Egypt, a route to Africa and Europe. And for China, a path of influence that runs from Shanghai through the desert, all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. The first trains are already running, from Riyadh to Mecca, from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, from Cairo to Alexandria. But this is only the beginning. New tracks are growing like veins in a new organism, connecting ports, capitals, and deserts. Where caravans once met, you now hear the sound of steel and electric motors. Chinese investments are changing not only the landscape, but also the logic of the region. In a world where borders still divide people, rail is starting to connect them. Tracks are laid where politicians were afraid to build bridges. Because a train does not ask about ideology, it asks about the route. The Middle East is slowly ceasing to be the land of oil and becoming the land of rails. And perhaps this is the biggest paradox, because what divided continents for thousands of years is once again starting to connect them. And every train that leaves the desert is part of a bigger journey, the one in which the world is once again heading towards the east. Whether in that journey the Middle East will be a passenger or the driver, that remains to be seen. On the map of the Persian Gulf, the distance between Dubai and Riyadh is just a few hundred kilometers. But only a few years ago, covering it took almost an entire day. First a plane, then a highway, and finally a sea of bureaucracy and sand. Today that is changing. Across the desert where the wind once painted the dunes, steel tracks of a new era are being laid. This is not an ordinary railway line. It is a project meant to connect the entire Arabian Peninsula, from Oman to Kuwait, from the Gulf to the Red Sea. The Arabs called it the Gulf Railway. In theory, it is a simple idea: to build a line connecting the member states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. In practice, it is an epic undertaking. Because rail in a region where caravans and trucks have dominated for thousands of years is not just transport. It is an economic, cultural, and political revolution. This is precisely where China entered the stage. When the Gulf states were wondering how to launch a project that required billions of dollars, cutting-edge technology, and experience in building infrastructure in extreme conditions, Beijing offered a ready-made solution. Chinese companies, which had previously built railways in Tibet, the deserts of Xinjiang, and the mountains of Pakistan, knew exactly how to lay tracks where there is nothing but sand and scorching heat. The first works began in Saudi Arabia, with the Riyadh-Dammam line, and then the Haramain high-speed railway linking Mecca, Medina, and Jeddah. It is an engineering masterpiece, built in partnership with Chinese firms and Spanish engineers. Trains run at over 300 km/h, carrying millions of pilgrims every year. For pilgrims to Mecca, this is not just comfort. It is a symbol of a new era, pilgrimage in the age of modernity. In the Emirates, the Etihad Rail Project has emerged, a national railway linking ports and cities. Its first sections, opened in 2023, pass through the deserts of Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Fujairah. In the future, the line is to run further, to Saudi Arabia, and then Oman. Chinese companies, including China Railway Construction Corporation, CRCC, and China Civil Engineering Construction Company, CCECC, are involved in the delivery of infrastructure, signaling systems, and rolling stock. At first glance, this is just investment in transport. In reality, it is a geopolitical connector for the region that aims to end dependence on aviation and oil. The railway is supposed to integrate the economies of the Gulf and turn them into a single logistical organism. These tracks carry not just goods, but also the idea of Arab integration that has been lacking for decades. For China, the Gulf Railway is something more, a logistical extension of the new Silk Road. From Dubai, goods can go by rail into Saudi Arabia, and from there further, to Jordan, Egypt, and Africa. In the other direction, through ports in Oman and the Emirates, Chinese containers can go straight onto trains and then onward to Europe. Every kilometer of track in the Gulf is a step towards a world in which Beijing no longer has to rely on sea routes controlled by the West. The Gulf, which for years lived in the rhythm of oil, is beginning to live in the rhythm of trains. For Saudi Arabia, it is a way to diversify its economy. For the Emirates, to reinforce Dubai's role as a logistics hub. For China, yet another element in its global network of influence. But these rails also have a symbolic dimension. When a train enters Dubai, passing dunes and desert towns, many older residents say it looks like an iron caravan. And indeed, the sleek modern trains gliding across the desert resemble the old caravans that thousands of years ago carried spices, gold, and silk. Only today the caravans are electric, precise, and built by the Chinese. It is a new version of an old story. Once again, the East is linking up with the West. Except this time, it is not caravans seeking China. It is China building the routes that come to the caravans. If there is a place where rail has a symbolic meaning, Saudi Arabia is one of them. It is here, in the land of pilgrims, desert and oil, that one of the most remarkable rail lines in the world was built, the Haramain High-Speed Railway. The tracks that connect the holy cities of Islam, Mecca, and Medina are more than an engineering marvel. They are a manifesto of a new era, an era in which pilgrimage meets technology and tradition meets the future. Construction of this line began in 2009, but it was only when Chinese companies joined the project that it gained pace and scale. Work was carried out by a consortium of firms from Saudi Arabia, Spain, and China, including China Railway Construction Corporation, CRCC, and China Railway Engineering Group, CREC, the same companies that had previously built stretches of the Tibetan Railway and sections of the overland Silk Road in Asia. Under extreme conditions, with temperatures reaching 50 degrees Celsius and sandstorms, a 450-kilometer line was created, adapted for trains speeding at 300 km/h. For Saudi Arabia, the project had a practical dimension. Millions of pilgrims traveling to Mecca each year needed safe and fast transport. But for China, it was an investment of strategic significance. By building tracks to Mecca, Beijing gained not only prestige, but something far more valuable: access to the infrastructure of the Sacred Heart of Islam. It is a symbolic gesture. A country that for centuries was distant in cultural and religious terms now co-creates a logistical network that serves millions of Muslims every day. Yet Haramain High-Speed Railway is only the beginning. Saudi Arabia plans a vast rail network of more than 8,000 kilometers. It is to include not only passenger lines but also freight routes linking the Red Sea with the Persian Gulf. This project is called the Saudi Land Bridge because its aim is to create an alternative to the Suez Canal. Goods arriving in Jeddah or Yanbu are to be loaded onto trains and carried across the country to Dammam. and from there further to the UAE, Iraq, and Kuwait. The Chinese have been involved in this project from the start. China Railway Construction Corporation provides technical consulting, and Chinese banks finance parts of the investment through infrastructure loans and investment funds. In practice, this means that every kilometer of new track in Saudi Arabia is at the same time a strand of China's Silk Road. For Riyadh, this is not only economic cooperation, but also an element of internal transformation. Rail is meant to help implement Vision 2030, the modernization plan created by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi Arabia wants to show the world that it can be modern, that in a country where for centuries people believed holy places were untouchable, you can build infrastructure of the future without losing spirituality. Chinese engineers often say that the most extraordinary aspect of this project was not the construction speed or the technology, but the fact that they had to learn to build in places where time flows differently. In Mecca, you cannot work during the pilgrimage season. In Medina, the noise of machines must give way to prayer. This required not only technical knowledge, but cultural understanding. The Chinese managed that. Today, Haramain is more than a rail line. It is a symbol of a civilizational compromise, proof that modernization can go hand in hand with religion, and that globalization can coexist with local tradition. The train to Mecca is more than transport. It is a journey between eras, between the world of pilgrims and the world of engineers, between the past of Islam and the future of globalization. And for China, it is also a reminder that in the 21st century, empires do not have to conquer territories to be present in their hearts. It is enough to lay tracks that lead where people have been heading for centuries, and make sure they travel on Chinese trains. If Saudi Arabia and the Emirates show the economic dimension of China's rail expansion, Egypt, Israel, and Jordan reveal its political and symbolic character. Because here, every kilometer of track is not only an investment, but an act of diplomacy, often more effective than thousands of speeches at the UN. Let's start with Egypt, a country that has lived to the rhythm of the Nile since the time of the pharaohs. Today, that same country lives to the rhythm of construction. In 2021, the government in Cairo signed a contract worth over $4.5 billion with a Chinese-German-Egyptian consortium to build the first electric high-speed railway in Africa. The main line, known as the Green Line, will connect Alexandria, Cairo, and the new administrative capital, and then extend all the way to the port of Sokhna on the Red Sea. In a second stage, the tracks are to reach Luxor and Aswan, linking the north and south of the country, a project that literally redraws Egypt. Chinese giants, including China State Construction Engineering Corporation, CSCEC, and China Railway Group Limited, CREC, are involved in the construction. But the most interesting part is that the Chinese are working here shoulder to shoulder with Germans, Siemens, and Egyptians, creating a model that links three continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. This is more than a railway. It is a geopolitical bridge. For Egypt, the project is a chance for economic revival. For China, another gateway into Africa, and one that does not require a fleet. The tracks that connect Alexandria with the Red Sea are as important as the Suez Canal, because they provide Beijing with an alternative overland route that can keep trade flowing if maritime routes are disrupted. Across the desert in Israel, rail has a completely different dimension. Here, in a country where every kilometer of land has historical significance, tracks become a tool for building the image of a modern state. Israel is developing a network linking the Mediterranean coast with Jerusalem and the north. The Tel Aviv-Jerusalem line is now a symbol of a technological leap. Trains cover the route in under 30 minutes, cutting through tunnels drilled into the Judean hills. But behind the scenes you can see something else. Chinese involvement. Chinese companies, including China Railway Tunnel Group and China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, CCECC, took part in tenders for tunnels and stations in Israeli rail projects. In Jerusalem, the Chinese co-financed sections of the light rail, although later, under U.S. pressure, some contracts were canceled. Even so, Beijing gained something more valuable than contracts: experience of working in one of the most politically complex environments in the world. Israel sees rail not only as a transport project, but as a tool for binding together territories and ideas. Lines connect Jewish and Arab cities, industrial hubs with agricultural areas, ports with the Negev desert. There are also plans for projects of regional importance. For example, a line linking Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, which would allow goods to move from the Mediterranean to the Gulf without sailing through the Suez Canal. And here again, Beijing appears. Because if such a project is built, China gains a new trade corridor linking 3 continents and bypassing strategic choke points controlled by the West. For Jordan, a landlocked country in a key location, this would be an infrastructure revolution. That's why Chinese companies have been investing in Jordanian rail and road networks for years, preparing the ground for a future corridor linking Asia with Africa. This rail also has a symbolic dimension. The tracks that run across land sacred to 3 religions remind us that technology can do what politics cannot: connect worlds that have been divided for centuries. Egypt, Israel, and Jordan, 3 states, 3 cultures, 3 political systems, are now building common infrastructure that in practice creates a new map of the Middle East. It's a map where borders are not lines of division, but rails of connection. For China, this is proof that rail is modern diplomacy. There is no need to send ambassadors when you send engineers, no need to sign alliances when you build bridges. In a world where everyone is fighting for influence, Beijing is building something much more durable: a network. And each station in that network, from Alexandria to Amman, is a stop on the journey toward a new world order, an order heading east. If the Arabian Peninsula is China's gateway to the Gulf, then Iran, Iraq, and Turkey are the key land corridor, the backbone of the new Silk Road running from Asia to Europe. Through this region runs the most difficult yet most strategic stretch of track, linking Western China with the Mediterranean. These tracks are full of paradoxes. They run through countries ravaged by war, yet carry the promise of stability. They are built under the shadow of sanctions, yet symbolize the freedom of movement. At the center of this puzzle stands Iran, a country Beijing sees as a long-term partner despite international tensions. In 2021, China and Iran signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement covering, among other things, the development of railways, ports, and energy infrastructure. One of its pillars is the Tehran-Mashhad-Sarax line, linking Iran with Turkmenistan, and from there, with China's Xinjiang province. Though little known to the public, this route is a key fragment of the overland Silk Road that carries Chinese goods to the Middle East without needing sea routes controlled by the U.S. Chinese firms such as China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, CCECC, are modernizing Iranian lines, building tunnels, and participating in the electrification of the Tehran-Isfahan route. The plan foresees that in coming years, a high-speed line will be built from Iran through Iraq to Syria, ending at the port of Latakia, China's vision of a Mediterranean corridor linking Asia with southern Europe. But it is in Iraq that this vision meets brutal reality. After decades of wars, sanctions, and chaos, the country is trying to rebuild basic infrastructure. In 2023, work began on the Basra-Shalamche line linking Iraq with Iran. At just 30 kilometers, it may sound symbolic, but in reality, it is a gateway to deeper integration. Once completed, it will allow Chinese goods to travel through Iran and Iraq to Mediterranean ports. For Beijing, this is a dream scenario, a land route that bypasses both the Suez Canal and the Strait of Hormuz. The Chinese are also investing in Iraq's reconstruction, bridges, roads, and rail terminals. They support projects in Baghdad and Basra and take part in talks on creating an international logistics hub linking the Middle East with Central Asia. These are not spectacular actions. They are quiet, systematic efforts to fill the map with rails. On the western edge of this corridor lies Turkey, a country that geographically and symbolically connects Asia and Europe. Here, China's rail strategy reaches its destination. Through the Turkish city of Kars runs the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars, BTK Railway, a line that has become one of the most important fragments of the new Silk Road. Although officially a Caucasus project, its development has been financially supported by Chinese banks, and container trains from Xi'an to Istanbul now operate on regular schedules. Chinese freight trains reach Europe via Turkey's Marmaray Tunnel, an underwater tunnel beneath the Bosphorus connecting Asia and Europe. This place is like a symbol of a new era. Chinese goods travel under a strait that for millennia has been crossed by fleets and caravans. In this way, rail becomes the modern incarnation of the old maritime and land silk routes, with one difference. This time, everything is automated, electric, and built by engineers from Shanghai, Urumqi, and Chengdu. Iran, Iraq, and Turkey are three links in a chain connecting Beijing with Berlin. Each one is weaker than the whole, but together they create a corridor of the future in which borders stop being obstacles, and rails become a metaphor for integration. In Iran, rail is a symbol of resistance to isolation. In Iraq, a symbol of reconstruction. In Turkey, a symbol of a bridge between worlds. For China, all these meanings are part of one plan, weaving a global network of influence that does not need armies or military bases to change the world. Because if in the 20th century, borders were drawn by tanks, in the 21st, they are drawn by tracks. At first glance, it seems impossible. A metro running through the desert, trains faster than planes, rail terminals where a decade ago, there was nothing but dunes and tents. And yet that is exactly what is happening before our eyes. The Middle East and Asia are becoming a laboratory for a new era of transport, and China is its architect. In Beijing and Shanghai, magnetic levitation, maglev, trains already run at speeds of over 600 km/h. But their aim is not just to impress the world. They are prototypes of a future that China plans to export to strategic regions like the Middle East. Where Europe sees sand and risk, China sees a test track. The most ambitious project is the concept of the Arab Hyperloop, a network of capsules moving at nearly 1,000 km/h between Riyadh, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi. Officially, the project is led by firms from the US and the UAE, but Chinese technology partners from CRRC and China Railway Group are working in the background, supplying components and maglev expertise. They are the ones designing magnetic systems and cooling solutions that allow this technology to function in desert conditions. Beneath Dubai and Riyadh, new generation metro networks are being built, fully autonomous, driverless, and controlled by artificial intelligence. Dubai's metro is already one of the most advanced systems in the world, but this is only the beginning. Riyadh is building a 176-kilometer metro, one of the largest such projects on the planet. Chinese companies such as China Railway Construction Corporation and Huawei are involved in providing digital solutions, traffic management systems, and underground communication. Beijing looks at the Middle East as a laboratory for technological diplomacy. Here it tests its solutions: smart traffic control systems, hydrogen-powered trains, green cargo lines. In Oman, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, stations are being built entirely from renewable materials, powered by solar panels. In Dubai, terminals with AI-operated automated cranes are being constructed. In Iran, mountain rail projects aim to use natural gradients to recover energy. For Beijing, it is no longer just about building tracks. It is about a system that will connect rail, sea, air, and digital transport into a single network. In China's Belt and Road strategy, the term Digital Silk Road appears with increasing frequency, a digital Silk Road that carries not containers, but data. And every new rail line is part of that bigger picture. The tracks carry not only goods, but also information. The Middle East, with infrastructure being built here from scratch, is an ideal site for implementing this vision. There are no old networks to modernize. You can build from the ground up exactly as Chinese engineers plan, from a blank sheet, straight into the future. In Dubai, talks are already underway on linking the Etihad rail network with intelligent data centers and logistics hubs controlled by AI systems. In Saudi Arabia, plans are being made for an integrated transport map in which every train, truck, and ship will be synchronized in real time. And in Oman, the idea is to deploy a fully autonomous freight transport system controlled from China. All this sounds like a science fiction script, but this is how future powers are born. Because the rail of the future is not just a means of transport, it is a tool of control, communication, and influence. The Chinese tracks that cut across the Middle East are becoming not only trade routes, but data routes. By 2040, if plans are realized, lines from China, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia will be linked into a single continental network, something past empires dreamed of, but which today can actually happen. And all thanks to a technology that begins with a simple idea: lay two parallel rails and let them meet the world. Because in the digital age, power no longer belongs to those who control the seas. It belongs to those who control the tracks and the signals.